The sound of rubble crunching under boots echoed through the ruins. Kreela adjusted her translator device, her glossy lavender skin shimmering faintly in the dim light. Her regal demeanor was at odds with her nervous fidgeting as she scanned the desolate surroundings. Human relics hold immense cultural value, she muttered, trying to convince herself that this scavenger mission wasn't a monumental mistake. Behind her, a tumbleweed rolled by, as if mocking her determination. Step 1 of survival. Her mentor's voice rang in her head. Blend in with the environment. She glanced at her mirror-like armor and winced. Yes, very inconspicuous, she sighed. Her translator crackled as she practiced her opening lines. Greetings, I come in peace and seek the treasures of your ancestors. She hesitated. Did that sound too imperialistic? A shadow darted past her peripheral vision, and she froze. Suddenly, a booming voice shouted, Stop right there! Kreela spun around, nearly tripping over her own feet. Standing atop a crumbling concrete pile was a disheveled human male. His beard looked like it had been through a war, and his clothes were a patchwork of scavenged fabric. He was holding what appeared to be a mop. What are you doing skulking around my turf? He demanded. Kreela stammered. Her translator, sensing her nerves, decided to embellish. I am here to plunder your treasures and make your species proud. The man raised an eyebrow. Plunder, huh? Well, you're off to a great start, Princess Plunder. She frowned, flustered. I didn't mean it like. Before she could finish, her foot landed on a pressure plate. A loud click echoed, and she froze. What was that? The man's smirk faded instantly. Oh no. You didn't. A sudden explosion of paint erupted from above, dousing Kreela in fluorescent pink and green. She shrieked, flailing her arms as the man dove toward her, tackling her to the ground just as a bucket fell where she'd been standing. Pinned beneath him, Kreela blinked up at the human, who was wincing in pain. You saved me? He groaned, rolling off her. Saved you from my own trap, apparently. He rubbed his shoulder and muttered. You aliens sure know how to make an entrance. Kreela sat up, wiping paint from her face. Why would you even set something like this? It's called deterrence, he said, pointing at the paint-splattered area. And it was supposed to be foolproof. Well, your foolproof contraption nearly killed me. He chuckled darkly. Welcome to Earth, Princess. Everything here is trying to kill you. She glared at him, her royal pride bruised. I am not a princess. Oh, my bad, he said, standing and offering her a hand. What's your name, then? She hesitated before replying. Kreela. Right. Kreela. He paused, smirking. But I'm still calling you Princess Plunder. She crossed her arms, still seated. And you are? Jace, he replied, dusting off his patched jacket. Jace, the guy who didn't ask for this mess. Kreela stood, her alien dignity slightly restored. Well, Jace, you've made your point. I'll leave your domain. But if I may. Nope, Jace interrupted. If you're sticking around, you're on your own. And don't touch anything else. Just as he said it, she leaned against a wall, triggering another trap. This time, a series of tiny darts shot out, narrowly missing her. Jace dove again, yanking her aside as a final dart grazed his arm. What part of don't touch anything do you not understand? He growled, clutching his arm. Kreela blinked, realizing her mistake. I'm sorry. Are you hurt? It's fine, Jace muttered, wincing. It's just a scratch. Nothing a post-apocalypse tetanus shot won't fix. She frowned. Is that sarcasm? He sighed. Yeah. Get used to it, Princess. Kreela bit her lip, unsure whether to apologize or argue. Before she could decide, Jace started inspecting the wall she had leaned on. You triggered another one of my traps. Lucky for you, this one's just darts and not something lethal. Lethal? She echoed, wide-eyed. He turned to her, smirking. You really don't get how dangerous it is here, do you? She began, but he held up a hand. Save it, Jace said, shaking his head. If you're sticking around, you'd better learn fast. Rule number 1, don't touch anything unless I say it's safe. Kreela crossed her arms indignantly. You can't tell me what to do. Jace shrugged. Suit yourself. But next time, I'm not throwing myself in front of a dart for you. Kreela bristled but kept quiet as Jace walked ahead, muttering to himself. Great. First aliens invade, and now they're breaking my stuff. Behind him, Kreela adjusted her ruined outfit, glaring at his back. Humans are insufferable. She grumbled, though she couldn't deny the flicker of curiosity and grudging admiration she felt toward him. Jace led the way through the bunker's labyrinth of makeshift hallways, grumbling under his breath as Kreela followed cautiously behind him. She tried her best not to touch anything, but the haphazard setup of wires, pipes, and odd trinkets made it nearly impossible not to brush against something. Why do you have so many traps? She asked, her voice tinged with exasperation. Why do you have such an urge to set them off? Jace shot back. It's not intentional, Kreela protested. Jace paused, turning to face her. Look, Princess, humans don't exactly have the luxury of trusting every alien that comes poking around. Some of your buddies tried to incinerate this planet, remember? Kreela's cheeks flushed a deeper shade of lavender. Those were extremists. Most of us didn't agree with that. Yeah, well, the paint cannon doesn't care about political nuance, Jace said dryly, stepping carefully over a tripwire. Kreela followed his gaze and cautiously stepped over the wire. At least you could have labeled these things. Labeled them? For who? The Apocalypse Postman? As they continued, Jace suddenly stopped. Don't touch that. But it was too late. Kreela's curiosity got the better of her, and her fingers grazed a shiny metal button. A loud whirring noise filled the air, and a mechanical boxing glove shot out of the wall, smacking Jace squarely in the face. He staggered backward, clutching his nose. Son of a! What part of don't touch anything is so hard to understand? I thought it was a light switch! Kreela exclaimed, her eyes wide with guilt and amusement. Jace glared at her through watering eyes. A light switch? In a booby-trapped bunker? Are you even trying to survive? Kreela stifled a laugh as Jace muttered curses under his breath, rubbing his face. They continued down another corridor, with Jace shooting wary glances at Kreela every time she got too close to the walls. Do me a favor, he said. Pretend you're in a museum where everything is cursed. Your bunker feels cursed, she quipped. Cute. Real cute, Jace replied. Moments later, Kreela accidentally brushed against a pile of cans, sending them clattering to the floor. Jace froze. What did you do now? Nothing. It was just some cans, she insisted. Suddenly, a net launched from the ceiling, entangling both of them and pinning them together. Kreela's arms were trapped against Jace's chest, their faces inches apart. Well, Jace said after a long pause. This is cozy. Kreela struggled against the net, her face heating up. Get us out of this. Working on it, Jace replied, trying to reach his knife. You designed this trap. Surely you know how to disarm it? Sure, Jace said. But it's hard to do that when someone's elbow is in my ribs. Kreela shifted, accidentally kneeing him in the thigh. Jace winced. Okay, now I'm regretting that whole shielding you with my body thing. Eventually, Jace managed to cut through the net, and they both fell to the floor in a heap. Jace groaned, sitting up. You're like a walking disaster, you know that? I said I was sorry! Kreela snapped, brushing dust off her clothes. Jace stood, shaking his head. Apology accepted. But if you set off one more trap, I swear. As he spoke, Kreela leaned against the wall to steady herself, accidentally pressing another hidden panel. A spray of foul-smelling gas filled the air, and both of them gagged. Jace staggered back, coughing. Oh great! The fart spray. Perfect. Fart spray? Kreela repeated, her voice muffled by her sleeve. It's a deterrent, Jace said between coughs. For anyone stupid enough to come in here. Well, it's working, Krila said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Jace waved the gas away, his patience wearing thin. That's it. No more wandering off, no more touching things, and no more, whatever this is. He gestured at her vaguely. Krila crossed her arms, glaring at him. You don't have to be so rude, you know. I didn't ask you to save me. You didn't have to ask. Jay shot back. Humans kind of have this thing about not letting people die needlessly. Krila opened her mouth to retort, but something in his tone stopped her. She closed her mouth and sighed instead. Fine. I'll be more careful. Jace gave her a skeptical look but nodded. Good. Let's just get this over with. They trudged on in silence, the tension between them slowly dissipating as the lingering smell of fart spray faded. Krila caught herself sneaking glances at Jace, her curiosity about him growing. He was gruff and infuriating, but there was something oddly endearing about his determination to survive, and his willingness to protect her, even at his own expense. Why do you live like this? She finally asked. Like what? Jace replied, not looking at her. Alone, surrounded by traps. Jace shrugged. It's easier this way. People are trouble. Krila frowned. Not everyone. Jace glanced at her, his expression softening slightly. Maybe not. But most people don't accidentally trigger a boxing glove trap to the face either. Krila smiled despite herself. Fair point. Jace smirked. Glad we're on the same page. Now let's try to make it 5 minutes without you breaking something, yeah? Only if you stop calling me princess. Krila countered. No promises, Jace said, leading the way forward. But I'll think about it. Jace kicked open the rusted door, revealing a hidden room bathed in a faint golden glow. Krila gasped, her eyes widening as she took in the sight. Shelves lined with pristine boxes, bottles, and artifacts stretched before them like an untouched treasure trove. Holy crap! Jace muttered, stepping inside. Krila followed hesitantly. Is this all yours? Looks like it, Jace replied, scratching his head. Didn't think I'd actually find it again. You lost your own stash? Krila asked, raising an eyebrow. Not lost, Jace corrected. Just misplaced. The traps were supposed to protect it, not make it impossible to get back to. Krila approached a shelf and picked up a bottle with a faded label. What is this? Wine, Jace said, taking it from her and inspecting the label. Vintage. Pre-apocalypse stuff. Worth a fortune back in the day. Wine? Krila repeated, tilting her head. Alcohol, Jace explained. Humans drink it to relax or make bad decisions. And you kept it all this time? Priorities, Jace said with a smirk, setting the bottle down. Krila wandered further, her fingers grazing items as she passed. She picked up a plush bathrobe and held it up. This is for combat? Jace laughed. No, that's for comfort. Humans like to feel fancy when they were lounging around. You should try it. Krila frowned but slipped the robe over her shoulders. The softness was unexpected, and she couldn't hide the small smile that crept across her face. See? Told you, Jace said, grabbing a nearby canister. Now this is the real treasure. What is it? Toilet paper, Jace said, holding it up like a sacred relic. Toilet paper? Krila repeated, confused. You don't want to know, Jace said quickly, setting it down. Trust me. Krila's eyes landed on a small device with a flashing screen. She picked it up. What does this do? Jace peered over her shoulder. That's a portable music player. Plays songs. People used to carry those around all the time. Krila pressed a button, and a tinny pop song began playing. The beat was upbeat and infectious, and she tilted her head, trying to make sense of it. This is music? Yep, Jace said, leaning against the shelf. Not exactly my style, but it'll do. Krila started swaying slightly to the beat, her curiosity overpowering her usual composure. Jace watched her, amusement flickering in his eyes. You dance? Dance? she asked, turning to him. Yeah, like this. Jace shuffled awkwardly, his movements stiff but rhythmic. Kreelaw's laugh was sudden and genuine, and Jace blinked, caught off guard by the sound. That is what you call dancing? She teased. Hey, it's post-apocalypse dancing. Cut me some slack, Jace said, grinning. Kreelaw tried to mimic his movements, her limbs moving with a strange mix of grace and awkwardness. The two of them stumbled around the room, laughing at each other's attempts. As the song ended, Kreelaw sank into a nearby chair, catching her breath. Humans are peculiar, she said, still smiling. Jace sat across from her, opening a bottle of wine and pouring it into two mismatched mugs. Takes one to know one, princess. She accepted the mug, eyeing the liquid curiously before taking a sip. Her face twisted into a grimace. This is terrible, Jace laughed. Welcome to humanity's finest traditions. They sat in companionable silence for a while, sipping their drinks. Kreelaw set her mug down and looked around the room. Why keep all this? It's not exactly useful. Jace shrugged. It's not about usefulness. It's about holding on to pieces of what used to be. Reminders that life wasn't always this bleak. Kreelaw studied him, her expression softening. That's surprisingly sentimental. Don't tell anyone, Jace said, smirking. I have a reputation to uphold. Kreelaw hesitated before speaking again. You're not like the humans I've read about. The ones who fought against us during the invasion. Jace's smirk faded. Yeah, well, not all of us are fighters. Some of us just try to survive. I think you're more than just a survivor, Kreelaw said quietly. Jace met her gaze, and for a moment, the tension between them shifted into something warmer. He leaned forward slightly, as if about to say something, but a loud squeak interrupted him. They both froze. Kreelaw shifted, and another squeak followed. She looked down and realized she was sitting on a whoopee cushion. Jace burst out laughing, nearly spilling his drink. Oh man, I forgot I had that thing. Kreelaw glared at him, her face a deep shade of lavender. You find this funny? Absolutely, Jace said between laughs. Despite herself, Kreelaw couldn't help but smile. She picked up the whoopee cushion and tossed it at him. Your sense of humor is as ridiculous as your traps. Jace caught it, grinning. Ridiculous, maybe, but effective. Kreelaw shook her head, her smile lingering. Humans really are something else. And you're just figuring that out now? Jace teased, leaning back and taking another sip of wine. Kreelaw leaned back too, her gaze drifting around the room. For the first time since the mission began, she felt a strange sense of ease. Perhaps humanity wasn't as strange, or as hopeless, as she'd thought. Kreelaw leaned against the doorway, watching Jace rummage through the shelves with a kind of chaotic expertise. He muttered to himself as he examined items, discarding some and carefully setting others aside. She found herself fascinated by his odd mixture of practicality and sentimentality. What exactly are you looking for now? She asked, curiosity getting the better of her. Something useful, Jace replied, pulling out a can-labeled Cheese Whiz. He inspected it, gave it a skeptical sniff, and promptly tossed it aside. Useful for what? Surviving or making people question your taste? Jace smirked. Both if I'm lucky. He pulled out a small, rectangular box and opened it. Inside was a pristine deck of playing cards. Now this, he said, holding them up, is survival gold. Kreelaw tilted her head. Cards? What do they do? They don't do anything, Jace said, shuffling the deck with practiced ease. They're for games. Distractions. Keeping your sanity intact when you're stuck in a bunker with someone who can't stop triggering traps. Kreelaw rolled her eyes. That was an accident. Sure it was, Jace teased, dealing out a mock hand of cards onto an overturned crate. She stepped closer, picking up one of the cards and inspecting it. Humans distract themselves with pictures on paper? Jace laughed. You make it sound so dumb when you put it that way. It is dumb. Maybe. But it works, Jace said, holding up a card. keeps you from losing it when everything else around you goes to hell. Krila considered this, setting the card back down. Your species is oddly resilient for one so fragile. Thanks? Jace said, raising an eyebrow. I think. She hesitated, then added, I mean it as a compliment. You endured despite overwhelming odds. That's what we do, Jace said with a shrug. Humans don't go down easy. Call it stubbornness or stupidity, but it keeps us alive. Krila studied him for a moment, her expression softening. It's admirable. Jace chuckled. Don't get all sentimental on me now, princess. Before she could respond, the bunker shook slightly, a low rumble reverberating through the walls. Krila's eyes widened. What was that? Probably nothing, Jace said, though his tone betrayed unease. He grabbed a flashlight and motioned for her to follow. As they moved cautiously through the bunker, the rumbling grew louder. Krila's translator crackled, and she caught snippets of what sounded like alien voices. There's someone out there, she whispered. Not someone, Jace corrected, shining the flashlight toward the entrance. Something. A massive, clawed silhouette loomed in the doorway, snarling as it scraped its way into the bunker. Tell me that's a friendly, Jace said, pulling out a makeshift weapon, a bat with nails hammered into it. Krila shook her head. It's a Ruckval. A predator from my world. Great. You brought intergalactic wildlife too, Jace muttered. The creature lunged, and Jace swung the bat with all his might, narrowly avoiding its claws. Krila scrambled to grab anything that might be useful, her hands landing on a canister marked pepper spray, extra strength. She yanked the top off and sprayed it directly at the creature's face. The Ruckval recoiled, letting out a guttural roar. Nice shot, princess! Jace called, moving to her side. Don't call me that, she snapped, though a small part of her appreciated the compliment. The creature, now blinded, flailed wildly, smashing into shelves and sending supplies flying. Jace grabbed Krila's arm and pulled her behind a sturdy support beam. Got any more tricks up your sleeve? He asked. None that involve repurposed household items, she replied. Jace smirked despite the chaos. Welcome to human ingenuity. The Ruckval charged blindly, slamming into a tripwire Jace had forgotten about. A series of chain reactions ensued. Buckets, wires, and an old toaster flew through the air, culminating in a large metal cage dropping from the ceiling and trapping the creature inside. Jace blinked. Well, that actually worked. Krila stared at the cage, then at him. Did you plan that? Totally, Jace said, grinning. You're lying. Yup. As the Ruckval thrashed against the bars, Krila stepped closer. It won't stay contained for long. Its strength will. The creature let out a final roar before collapsing in the cage, knocked out by its own exertion. Never mind, she finished, her tone flat. Jace dusted off his hands. And that, princess, is why humans are the best at surviving ridiculous situations. Krila shook her head, a reluctant smile tugging at her lips. You're insufferable. Thanks, Jace said, grabbing a nearby bag and stuffing it with supplies. Now let's get out of here before something even worse shows up. As they made their way out of the bunker, Krila glanced at Jace. I still don't understand why you saved me. You could have let me fend for myself. Jace shrugged. Maybe I'm just a sucker for trouble. Or maybe I like having someone around to laugh at my jokes. Krila rolled her eyes. Your jokes are terrible. Then why are you smiling? Jace shot back. She quickly turned her face away, but he caught the faint hint of a smile before she did. As they emerged into the sunlight, Jace looked around, scanning the horizon. Well, princess, what's next? Back to your people, or sticking around to make my life more complicated? Krila hesitated, then smirked. I think I'll stay. Someone has to keep you from accidentally triggering your own traps. Jace laughed, slinging the bag over his shoulder. Fair enough. Just don't get too comfortable. This isn't exactly a palace. I'll manage, Krila said, following him. And for the first time since arriving on Earth, she felt like she might actually belong.